For over 50 years, the life of Bobby Dunbar was a matter of public and private record. He survived a disappearance that made national headlines, inherited a family estate, and eventually died in 1966, leaving behind a clear line of descendants. In the early 2000s, this family tree was considered an established fact. Bobby sat at the center of a lineage that connected the modern Dunbar family to a wealthy Louisiana past. That history began to shift in 2004. Margaret Dunbar Cutright, Bobby's granddaughter, began investigating the old family stories. Her research eventually led her to ask her father, Bob Dunbar Jr., to provide a DNA sample for modern profiling. It was a move intended to confirm the family's heritage. However, the laboratory results would soon contradict a century of legal documentation. This image shows the type of laboratory environment where that profiling took place. Scientists compared the DNA of Bob Dunbar Jr. directly against a known paternal cousin, the biological son of the original Bobby Dunbar's brother. This visualization shows how genetic markers are compared to establish a family link. In this case, the test returned a complete match failure. Bob Dunbar Jr. and his cousin shared no biological connection. This meant that the man the world knew as Bobby Dunbar was not a Dunbar at all. He had lived his entire life, inherited his wealth, and raised his children under a name that did not belong to him. If the man in the Dunbar home was a stranger, the entire history of the 1912 disappearance has to be re-examined. We have to look at how a child's true identity was erased by the state. The mystery began here, at Sway Lake, Louisiana, in August 1912. The Dunbars were a wealthy, prominent family, on a fishing trip in this swampy, isolated terrain. On the morning of August 23rd, 4-year-old Bobby was playing near the water's edge. In a matter of moments, he was gone. The search was immediate and destructive. Hundreds of volunteers used dynamite to blast the lake bed, hoping a body would float to the surface. They even killed and dissected large alligators to see if the boy had been eaten. Despite these efforts, not a single trace of the boy was found. The Dunbars returned home to a life defined by an empty room and a massive, unsolved disappearance. When a family of this status loses a child, the pressure to find a resolution becomes immense. 8 months of grief had created a situation where any possible lead was treated as a certainty. In April 1913, police in Mississippi detained a handyman named William Cantwell Walters. He was traveling with a boy who looked remarkably like the missing Bobby. Walters insisted there was a mistake. He claimed the boy was Charles Bruce Anderson, the son of a woman named Julia, who had given Walters permission to take the child with him as he traveled for work. When the Dunbars first met the boy, the reaction was not one of recognition. The child cried, tried to get away from Leslie Dunbar, and showed no sign of knowing Bobby's younger brother. The next day, Leslie took the boy to be bathed. Afterward, she announced she had discovered specific moles and scars that proved he was her son. She chose to ignore the child's fear and his lack of memory in favor of the physical marks she expected to find. With that declaration, the Dunbars claimed the child. Their need to fill the void left at Sway Lake had effectively overridden the boy's own identity. Then Julia Anderson arrived. As a poor, unmarried woman from North Carolina, seen here in her working-class environment, she had almost no social standing compared to the wealthy Dunbars. The battle for the child was fought on the grounds of character and class. The public and the press viewed Julia as a woman of low morals, while the Dunbars were seen as a pillar of the community. When police put Julia in front of a lineup, she hesitated. She hadn't seen her son in over a year and was visibly overwhelmed. That hesitation was used against her in this courtroom. The legal system favored the influential family, branding Julia a liar and sentencing William Walters to prison for a kidnapping that never happened. The boy was legally declared to be Bobby Dunbar. Through a combination of social status and judicial pressure, Julia's son was erased, and a wealthy family's tragedy was officially solved. The 2004 DNA results changed the story back. They proved that the man who lived as Bobby Dunbar for 5 decades had always been Bruce Anderson. This scientific record clears William Walters of his crime and confirms that Julia Anderson was telling the truth. She was a mother whose child was taken by a system that valued the grief of the wealthy over the rights of the poor. It is a reminder that a fabricated reality can be maintained for generations when it is supported by institutional power and the collective desire to believe a lie. While Bruce Anderson finally has his name back, the resolution of the DNA test leaves another part of the story completely empty. Because the 1913 trial was considered a success, all search efforts for the real missing child ended the moment Bruce was handed to the Dunbars. If the boy in the Dunbar home was Bruce Anderson, then what actually happened to Bobby Dunbar at Sway Lake?